The proportional strength of a spider. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Most people might not think of Peter Parker when thinking of some of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe. But despite appearances, he is actually super strong and is probably one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe. While we might think of him as being wiry now in terms of his appearance, there were times in the 90s and early 2000s when he was looking actually super swole in those comics. Trust me, I've seen it. Today we're going to look at how strong, smart, and powerful Spider-Man is capable of being, as we count down the top 10 strongest mutants who lost to Spider-Man. Alright, let us get counting. Number 10, Sauron. While Sauron might not be the most conventional of mutants in the sense that he wasn't born a mutant, he was mutated from a human to Pteranodon, after suffering an attack from gigantic pteranodons who escaped the Savage Land. Their bites transformed him so that not only did he now resemble them, but he also found he had the ability and need to feed and drain on the life force energy of others to survive. I think he found that out through his dog too, which is sad. No, not the dog. So while not immune in the same way that the X-Men are, being heavily mutated, I think we can count him as a mutant for the purpose of this list. Spider-Man and his team of X-Men classmates ended up teaming up and defeating Sauron in Spider-Man and the X-Men. And yeah, you heard me right. There is a mini-series where Spider-Man joins the X-Men and is put in charge of a class. Even though he's not quite a mutant, but he's a mutate, so I guess it's fine. Number 9, Deadpool. Speaking of mutates, these two have crossed paths quite a few times now, although I'm still waiting for that MCU team up for them. Come on, Marvel, Disney, make this happen for us. It needs to be a thing. But while Deadpool is usually seen as a huge Spidey fan, and Spider-Man for the most part tries to be good about tolerating Deadpool's ridiculous behavior, and sometimes he's actually even a fan of him too, in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, Spider-Man gets pulled into Deadpool's zany world to battle. In Deadpool's reality-warping mind, Spider-Man becomes just a whale and Deadpool the harpooner that is hunting him with puns. That's right, this actually leads to a pun-off full of verbal insults and zingers, which ends with Spider-Man defeating him by throwing the figurative and literal book at him, the Book of Morality. Nothing knocks out Deadpool like smacking him with the hard and hefty weight of responsibility. And yeah, like I said, I know Deadpool isn't really a full mutant and is considered a mutate, but I was willing to consider him an honorable mutant for this list because I just can't resist an opportunity to talk about Spider-Man and Deadpool's relationship in a video. The bromance is so strong between them. Number 8, Angel. These two ran into one another in an issue of Marvel Team-Up Volume 1, issue number 4, featuring Spider-Man and the X-Men. Like most team-ups, this one starts with the X-Men coming to blows with Spider-Man after Professor Xavier reads an article in the newspaper that tells him that a scientist and a former colleague of his has been kidnapped by the masked vigilante Spider-Man. First up is Warren Worthington III, Angel. Understandably, Angel was no match for Spider-Man, who already had practice when it came to flying enemies thanks to his own villain, the Vulture. He has run-ins with the Vulture pretty early on in his own series, so. Webbing combined with his quick reflexes and acrobatics allowed him to easily beat Angel in one-on-one combat. So yeah, if you think just because you can fly you're gonna be able to get away, no. Number 7, Nightcrawler. The first time these two fought, it was an even match, although I will say that Spider-Man, it looked to me that he actually had the upper hand. It also happened in his own series in Amazing Spider-Man issue 161, which bodes well for our web-singing hero should they have actually needed to come to blows and actually have a fight. This was one of those misunderstanding fights, as team-ups usually go. And like most instances of superheroes fighting one another, this of course was just a misunderstanding. Nightcrawler and Spider-Man both thought that the other actually might be a murderer, who they both happened to trying to be tracked down at the same time. And at the end of the issue, the Punisher would actually show up to complicate things further, then he would get involved. The first fight between Nightcrawler and Spider-Man ends with Spider-Man managing to pin Nightcrawler down, but unfortunately Kurt teleports away before Spidey can turn him into the authorities. But we've also seen Spider-Man full-on beat Kurt in a fight that I'm going to dive into later in this list. Don't worry, I'll come back to it. Number 6, Cyclops. You would think that optic blasts beat Spider-Man, right? Like you could cook a spider with an optic blast, couldn't you? Just blast it apart or I don't know. Well, you'd be wrong. Cyclops actually has had a few attempts at trying to blast Spider-Man in the comics, but even with his insane level of precision with his optic blast while using his visor, the problem he runs into is he can never actually hit Spider-Man. Spider-Man is simply too agile and always manages to dodge Cyclops' attacks. We also see this in the Marvel team-up issue that I was talking about earlier, issue number 4, and Jean Grey is the one who actually has to step in to get the job done when it comes to capturing Spider-Man, using her telekinesis. And yet, in the same issue, she somehow manages to momentarily get kidnapped by Morbius. She goes from being like the most powerful to being like, oh no, I'm kidnapped. I was like, wait, but can't you just telekinesis Morbius to, I don't know. I'm not writing this, obviously. I'm not writing these old school comics, so it's not up to me. Number 5, Sabretooth. In issue 116 of Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter crosses paths with Sabretooth when he shows up to attack Black Cat, who had just escaped the Foreigner's clutches. Sabretooth was sent to make her pay, and while Felicia doesn't seem to be afraid of Sabretooth's threats to skin her alive, Spider-Man returns just as Victor is set to pounce on her. The two tussle, and Peter leaves Victor crying out when he shoots him in the face with his webbing. Victor rips the webbing off his face, in the process doing damage with his own claws, proving that not only is Spider-Man stronger than Sabretooth this time around, but he seems to be quite a bit smarter too. Like, Victor, you did that to yourself. What you doing? Number 4, Wolverine. Spider-Man and Wolverine have always had a kind of frenemy status, often finding it hard to see eye to eye on things. They've traveled through time and space together, swapped bodies, and been forced to go on all kinds of adventures together. They also both seem to have a thing for MJ, which has gotten Logan into trouble more than once with Peter Parker. In the video game Spider-Man Web of Shadows, however, it's the fact that Wolverine thinks Spider-Man smells off that prompts him to fight him. What Logan is actually smelling is the symbiote within Peter Parker, but still, Logan is hesitant to trust Spider-Man, choosing to question him instead, while you as Spider-Man are forced to fight against him. Logan believes that the symbiote has taken control of you. Being, of course, that you are the protagonist in the game, you end up coming on top and convincing Wolverine that you are in fact the real Peter Parker, and that you are the one in control between you and your symbiote, despite what he may or may not smell. You also have to answer a lot of questions during that fight. Number 3, Iceman. Also coming at us from Marvel Team Up is another popular and original member of the X-Men team, Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. Spider-Man manages to smash through Iceman's ice slide, making him fall and easily defeating him. Spidey even suggests to Iceman that he and Human Torch should hang out more because both seem to have a lot to learn. Ooh, sick burn, pun intended. And you know, in the 70s, this may actually have been true, as Spider-Man has already proved his mettle at this point by taking on the entire Fantastic Four team as well. Spider-Man just kicks everybody's butt. Number 2, Colossus. Known as being the strongest member of the X-Men, even Colossus was no match for Spider-Man. This fight happened in the Secret Wars series out of the 80s in issue number 3. He takes out Colossus in one panel. Granted, Spider-Man also seems to have the element of surprise on his side here. Professor X has only just managed to warn everyone that he senses Spider-Man while Spider-Man is in the process of dropping in. He defeats Colossus in one panel using his webbing to blind him, because for those of us who are used to seeing, not being able to see, I guess is kind of everybody's weakness. So there you go, blind Colossus and you can defeat him. Number 1, all of the X-Men. And during this fight in Secret Wars, Spider-Man ended up taking on and defeating all of the X-Men as well, at least all of the X-Men that were there at the time. Considering that Peter Parker is known for being friends of quite a few mutants, it might surprise you to hear that he'd even battled the X-Men. But this was during their time on Beyonder's Battle World, where Spider-Man had just overheard them discussing mutant oppression and joining with Magneto. And you know, Magneto's a bad guy. So this just rubbed Spidey the wrong way, and he decided to attack, revealing that he'd heard their plan and he was gonna rat them out. I mean, I get why he attacked them to stop them, but confessing you're gonna rat them out seems like a bad move. He dodges attacks from Cyclops and Storm, swats Wolverine out of the way with one hand, ties up Rogue and hangs her from a pipe, and sticks Nightcrawler in a spot where his teleportation abilities appear to be disabled. This is the defeat that I was talking about earlier for Kurt, by the way. It was pretty impressive, and at the end of it, he left Logan, if you can believe it, actually remarking how lucky the X-Men were that that was all that Spider-Man had done to them. In his opinion, it could have been way worse. Of course, Xavier did manage to at least wipe Spider-Man's memories of the conversation just as he was getting away, proving that Spider-Man is still no match for a powerful psionic mutant. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. I hope you enjoyed this list. Who would you like Spider-Man to come up against in a fight? Which mutant do you think could take him? Which mutant would you like to see him beat? Do you think Spider-Man is made more undefeatable due to him being the poster boy of Marvel? Does he have plot armor? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 Mutants with Dumb Weaknesses. 209 Callie comments, if red camouflaged you from Cyclops, I can see Wolverine pulling a Batman and painting himself and everything in a room red to mess with Cyclops. Lol. I would actually love to read the Marvel version of that story so much. The only thing I don't think is that Wolverine would be as much of a jerk as All-Star Batman was in that story. I just feel like he wouldn't quite hold it over Scott quite as much. But maybe. Cloak is not right. Scott and Logan's real weakness is redheads. Then again, Scott looking through his visor sees blondes as redheads. Truth about Emma uncovered. Ha! Lol, now I actually want to see some fan art of a redheaded Emma Frost being like, this is how Cyclops sees Emma Frost. That would be cool. I think that you might be onto something with that theory there, bub. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Be sure to comment below for a chance to have your thoughts and feels featured in a future list. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host, Amanda McKnight, reminding you to stay nerdy, YouTube.